2 shots. That's all it takes. 2 bullets fired on a sun-drenched street in a city most people had never heard of. The first pierces flesh. The second finds a heartbeat and stops it cold. In 7 seconds, the world changes forever. But here's what makes your blood run cold. It almost didn't happen. The assassin had already failed. He'd already given up. He was standing on a street corner eating a sandwich when fate, or something darker, delivered his target directly into his hands. Some call it coincidence. Others call it destiny. But on June 28, 1914, in the Bosnian city of Sarajevo, a 19-year-old tuberculosis patient with a death wish pulled a trigger twice and set in motion a catastrophe that would consume 50 million souls. This is the story of the assassination that shattered an empire, ignited a continent, and proved that sometimes the smallest match can burn the whole world down. The Balkans in 1914. If you want to understand what happened that summer morning, you need to understand this place first. Because the Balkans weren't just a powder keg waiting to explode. That's the cliché everyone uses. No, the Balkans were something worse. They were a wound that never healed, picked at by empires, infected by nationalism, festering with old hatreds and new ambitions. For centuries, this corner of Europe had been a crossroads. Empires clashed here. Religions collided. The Ottoman Turks had ruled these lands for 500 years before their grip finally loosened. And when they retreated, they left behind a patchwork of peoples who'd been living together, sometimes peacefully, often not, for generations. Serbs, Croats, Bosniaks, Muslims, Orthodox Christians, Catholics, all crammed into a space smaller than the state of West Virginia. And hovering over all of it, like an aging parent refusing to let go, was the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Picture an empire in slow-motion collapse. The Habsburgs had ruled Central Europe for 600 years, but by 1914, their realm was a creaking, groaning anachronism. 11 major ethnic groups. 15 official languages. An empress so old he'd been crowned in 1848, before the American Civil War, before the unification of Germany, before the world had electricity or telephones. Franz Joseph I was 84 years old in 1914. He'd buried his wife, assassinated by an Italian anarchist. He'd buried his only son, dead by suicide in a hunting lodge. He was a relic presiding over an empire that couldn't decide if it wanted to reform or simply expire. And into this mess, he sent his nephew, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne. A man most of Europe barely knew. A man who, in a few weeks, the entire world would never forget. Let's talk about Franz Ferdinand. Because if you're going to understand why he died, you need to understand who he was. He wasn't supposed to be the heir. That honor belonged to Crown Prince Rudolf, Franz Joseph's son, the golden boy, the future of the dynasty. But Rudolf put a bullet in his head in 1889. And suddenly the line of succession shifted. It fell to Franz Joseph's brother, Karl Ludwig. But Karl Ludwig drank contaminated water from the Jordan River on a pilgrimage and died of typhoid fever in 1896, which left Karl Ludwig's eldest son, Franz Ferdinand, 50 years old in 1914. Tall, stern, a Habsburg through and through, with the protruding lower lip and heavy-lidded eyes that mark the family's distinctive, some said inbred, features. He was a complicated man. Authoritarian by instinct, but not stupid. He understood that the empire was dying. He had plans, radical plans, to restructure the whole system, to give more power to the Slavic peoples within the empire, to create a federation that might actually survive into the 20th century. Which made him dangerous. Because there were people who wanted the empire to die. People who saw any reform, any concession, as a threat to their dream of something else. Something called Greater Serbia. Across the border, in the small, scrappy kingdom of Serbia, nationalism burned like a fever. Serbia had won its independence from the Ottomans in 1878. It was tiny, smaller than Indiana, but it was proud. Fiercely, intoxicatingly proud. And it had a vision. Not just a kingdom, but a homeland for all South Slavs. Serbs, yes, but also the Serbs living under Austro-Hungarian rule in Bosnia, in Croatia, in the Empire's southern territories. One people, one nation, one dream, Greater Serbia. It was a beautiful idea to some, a terrifying threat to others. And in Belgrade, the Serbian capital, there were men willing to kill for it. Secret societies, nationalist cells, groups with names like Unification or Death and the Black Hand. These weren't politicians or diplomats. These were terrorists, radicals, men who believed that violence was the only language empires understood. The Black Hand was the most dangerous, led by a Serbian military officer named Dragutin Dimitrijevic, a man so committed to conspiracy he went by the code name Apis, after the Egyptian bull god. Apis and his network had one goal: to strike at Austria-Hungary, to destabilize it, to carve away its Slavic territories and unite them with Serbia. All they needed was the right target, the right moment, the right weapon. Spring 1914. In the Bosnian capital of Sarajevo, 3 teenage boys are recruited. Their names are Gavrilo Princip, Nedeljko Kabrinović, and Trifko Grabez. None of them are older than 20. None of them have much to live for. Princip is 19, thin as a rail, sick with tuberculosis, though he doesn't know it yet. He's a student, or was, expelled from school for taking part in a demonstration against Austrian rule. He's angry, disillusioned, a true believer in the cause of South Slavic liberation. Kabrinović is 19 too, a printer's apprentice, quick-tempered, volatile, the kind of kid who reads anarchist pamphlets and dreams of making history. Grabez is 18, the youngest, quieter than the others, but no less committed. All 3 have been living in Belgrade, soaking up nationalist propaganda, attending secret meetings, waiting for their chance to matter. And in the spring of 1914, that chance arrives. The Black Hand makes contact. The message is simple: Archduke Franz Ferdinand is coming to Sarajevo. He'll be there in June for military exercises, an official visit. The heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary. Unguarded, accessible, vulnerable. It's an opportunity too good to pass up. The boys are given weapons: 6 semi-automatic pistols, 4 bombs, crude things, hand grenades with a 10-second delay. They're also given cyanide capsules, in case they're captured, in case they need to escape justice. They're told to swallow the poison the moment the deed is done. Let's pause here, because we need to talk about what we know and what we don't. History loves a clean narrative, a straight line from cause to effect. But the truth about the Black Hand's involvement is murkier than most people realize. We know the weapons came from Serbia. We know Serbian military officers were involved in the plot. But how high did it go? Did the Serbian government know? Did they approve? After the war, when everyone was looking for someone to blame, Austria-Hungary insisted Serbia was behind the whole thing, that it was state-sponsored terrorism. Serbia denied it, said the Black Hand was a rogue operation, that the government had no control over these fanatics. The truth? Probably somewhere in between. What we do know is this: 3 teenagers, armed and indoctrinated, crossed the border from Serbia into Bosnia in late May. Their mission was clear: kill the Archduke, strike a blow for freedom, become martyrs. They had no idea they were about to start the deadliest war in human history. June 28, 1914. The date itself is a provocation. Vidovdan, Saint Vitus's Day. In Serbian culture, it's one of the most important dates on the calendar. It commemorates the Battle of Kosovo in 1389, when Serbian forces were defeated by the Ottoman Empire. A day of mourning, a day of national pride, a day that symbolizes Serbian resistance and sacrifice. And Franz Ferdinand chose this day, this specific, loaded, symbolic day, to visit Sarajevo. Was it ignorance? Arrogance? A calculated insult? We'll never know. But to the Bosnian Serbs watching the Archduke's motorcade roll through their streets, the message was clear. Austria-Hungary doesn't care about your history, doesn't respect your culture. Doesn't see you as anything but subjects to be ruled. It was gasoline on a fire. Morning breaks over Sarajevo. It's going to be a hot day. The kind where the sun sits heavy on your skin and the air shimmers above the cobblestones. Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Sophie, are staying at a spa resort just outside the city. She's with him on this trip, unusual for a royal visit, but Franz Ferdinand insisted. He loves her, genuinely, deeply, in a way that's almost scandalous for a Habsburg. Sophie von Hohenberg wasn't royal enough for the court. She was an aristocrat, sure, but not from a reigning family. When Franz Ferdinand married her in 1900, he had to renounce any claim to the throne for their children. At court functions in Vienna, she was snubbed, forced to walk behind women of higher rank, excluded from official ceremonies. But here, in Sarajevo, away from the rigid protocol of the imperial capital, she could sit beside her husband, ride in the same car, be treated as his equal. It was a small mercy. It would also get her killed. The plan for the day is straightforward. The Archduke will inspect military exercises outside the city in the morning. Then he'll return to Sarajevo for an official reception at City Hall. A motorcade through the streets. Crowds. Ceremony. The usual imperial pageantry. Security is light. Almost criminally light. There are soldiers, yes, hundreds of them, but they're stationed outside the city, at the military grounds. In Sarajevo itself, local police are responsible for crowd control. No advance sweep of the route. No closed streets. No bodyguards in the car with Franz Ferdinand. The motorcade will drive along the Apple Quay, a wide boulevard that runs beside the Miljacka River. 4 miles of open road, lined with spectators. It's a security nightmare. And 6 assassins know it. Because Princip, Kabrinovic, and Grabes aren't alone. They've recruited 3 more conspirators. Local boys. Mohammed Mehmed Basic, a Bosniak carpenter. Vaso Kubrilovic, a 17-year-old student. Cvetko Popovic, an 18-year-old. 6 in total. They position themselves along the route, spaced out, weapons hidden. The plan is simple. If the first assassin fails, the second tries. If the second fails, the third. Someone will get a clear shot. Someone will succeed. They wait in the crowd. Hearts pounding. Palms sweating. At 10 a.m., the motorcade appears. 6 cars. The Archduke and Sophie are in the third. An open-top Graf and stiff touring car. Deep green. Elegant. Completely exposed. Franz Ferdinand is wearing the dress uniform of a cavalry general. White tunic. Gold braid. A high collar. A plumed helmet rests beside him on the seat. Sophie is in white, too. A long dress. A wide-brimmed hat with feathers. She's smiling. They wave at the crowd. The crowd waves back. Some cheer. Some are silent. In Bosnia, loyalties are divided. Some see the Archduke as a future reformer. Others see him as just another oppressor in a fancy uniform. The motorcade moves slowly. 15 miles per hour. Maybe less. The assassins watch. Waiting. The first in line is Mehmed Basic. He's standing near the Kumerja Bridge, a bomb in his coat pocket. The cars approach. He freezes. Later, he'll claim a policeman was standing too close, that he couldn't pull the bomb without being seen. But the truth is simpler. He lost his nerve. The motorcade passes. Mehmed Basic does nothing. Next is Kabrinovic. He's near the central police station, just past the Kumerja Bridge. Young, reckless, buzzing with adrenaline. He sees the Archduke's car approaching. He doesn't hesitate. Kabrinovic pulls the bomb from his jacket, strikes the primer against a lamppost, a sharp crack, and hurls it at the car. Time slows. The bomb tumbles through the air. Franz Ferdinand sees it coming. He raises his arm, an instinctive, futile gesture, and the bomb bounces off the folded roof of the car. It lands in the street, and explodes. The blast is deafening. Shrapnel tears through the air. Smoke, screams, chaos. But Franz Ferdinand and Sophie are untouched. The bomb bounced off their car and detonated behind them, striking the fourth vehicle in a convoy. 2 officers are wounded, one seriously, a piece of shrapnel embedded in his skull. A dozen spectators are hit. Blood on the cobblestones. People running, shouting, crying. Gavrilo doesn't wait to see the damage. He pulls out his cyanide capsule, swallows it, and jumps into the Miljacka River. He expects to die. He doesn't. The cyanide is old, degraded. It makes him vomit violently, but it doesn't kill him. He thrashes in the shallow water, choking, retching, before police drag him out and beat him half to death. The motorcade screeches to a halt. Franz Ferdinand is furious. "So this is how you welcome your guests," he shouts at the local officials. "With bombs." But he's alive. Sophie is alive. And the question now is, what happens next? The smart move, the obvious move, would be to cancel the rest of the visit. Turn the cars around. Get the Archduke out of Sarajevo immediately. But that's not what happens. Franz Ferdinand insists on continuing to City Hall. There's a reception planned. Speeches. He won't be cowed by terrorists. So the motorcade moves on. Faster now. Rattled. Nervous. The remaining assassins are scattered along the route. Grabers and Gavrilo lose their nerve. They don't even try. Popovic is too far from the street. Can't get a clear shot. The Archduke reaches City Hall. The assassination has failed. Inside City Hall, everything is surreal. The mayor of Sarajevo begins his prepared speech, a flowery, obsequious welcome to the heir to the throne. Franz Ferdinand interrupts him. "Mr. Mayor, one comes here for a visit and is received by bombs. It is outrageous." There's an awkward silence. Then the ceremony continues. Speeches, handshakes, smiles that don't reach anyone's eyes. Sophie excuses herself to change. Her white dress is spattered with blood from the wounded officers. When she returns, there's a debate. What now? The original plan was for the motorcade to proceed through the city to the National Museum. More crowds, more exposure. But General Oskar Pošiorek, the military governor of Bosnia, argues for a change of route. They'll go straight down the Apple Quay, the wide boulevard by the river, and head directly to the hospital to visit the wounded officers. Fewer side streets, fewer crowds, safer. It's a good plan. Except nobody tells the drivers. 11 a.m. The motorcade leaves City Hall. 6 cars, same formation as before. Franz Ferdinand and Sophie in the third. They turn onto the Apple Quay, heading back the way they came. And for a moment, it seems like the day might end without further incident. But then the lead driver makes a mistake. He turns right onto Franz Joseph Street, the original route, the one that was supposed to be cancelled. General Pošiorek, riding in the Archduke's car, realizes the error immediately. Wrong way. Stop. We are supposed to stay on the Apple Quay. The driver brakes. The car jerks to a halt, right in front of Schiller's Delicatessen. And standing on the corner, 5 feet away, is Gavrilo Princip. Princip had given up. After Gavrinovich's failed bombing, the whole plan had fallen apart. The other assassins had scattered. Princip assumed the Archduke was long gone, safe in some guarded building. So he'd bought a sandwich and was standing on the corner, trying to figure out what to do next. And then, like a gift from some dark god, the Archduke's car pulled up right in front of him. Stopped. Engine idling. Franz Ferdinand and Sophie sitting less than 6 feet away. Princip doesn't think. He steps forward, pulls the pistol from his coat. A Browning M 1910 semi-automatic. 7 rounds. He raises it. Aims. Someone in the crowd sees the gun and lunges for him. Too late. Princip fires. The first shot hits Sophie in the abdomen. She gasps and collapses onto her husband's chest. Franz Ferdinand catches her. Sophie, Sophie, don't die. Stay alive for our children. Princip fires again. The second bullet strikes the Archduke in the neck, severing his jugular vein. Blood everywhere. Franz Ferdinand slumps back in his seat, his head lolling to the side. Someone shouts, "Get them to the hospital." The driver guns the engine. The car lurches forward. But it's already too late. They don't make it to the hospital. By the time the car reaches the governor's residence, just a few blocks away, Franz Ferdinand is unconscious. Sophie is already dead. Doctors rush to help, but there's nothing they can do. The Archduke's uniform is soaked through with blood. His lips move, forming silent words. At 11:30 a.m., 30 minutes after Princip fired, Franz Ferdinand dies. His last words, barely audible, were to Sophie, "It's nothing. It's nothing." Back on Franz Joseph Street, Gavrilo Princip is trying to die. He swallows his cyanide capsule, the same useless, degraded poison as Kabrinovich's. It makes him vomit. Doesn't kill him. He raises the pistol to his own head. But the crowd is on him now. Someone grabs his arm. The gun discharges into the air. Police and civilians drag him to the ground. They beat him, kick him, break his ribs. Princip doesn't resist. He's accomplished his mission. The heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary is dead, and he's about to find out what that really means. News of the assassination spreads like wildfire. In Vienna, Emperor Franz Joseph receives the telegram at his summer residence. He's 84 years old. He's buried so many people he loved. His response is cold, clinical. A higher power has re-established the order which I unfortunately was unable to maintain. He'd never liked Franz Ferdinand, resented the reforms he wanted, resented the morganatic marriage. But his nephew was still the heir. And now the empire's succession was in chaos again. Across Europe, the reaction is muted at first. An assassination. Tragic, certainly. But the Balkans were always violent. This was just another flare-up in a region that never seemed to settle down. Few people understood, in those first hours, what had just been set in motion. Because this wasn't just a murder. It was a spark. And all around it, invisible to most, were mountains of tinder waiting to ignite. The interrogations begin immediately. Princip is dragged to police headquarters in Sarajevo. Blood on his face. Ribs broken. But defiant. "I am a Yugoslav nationalist," he tells his interrogators. "I aimed at the heir to the throne because I considered him dangerous to the Slavic people." He won't give up his accomplices. Not at first. But the Austrian police are efficient, brutal. Within days, they've rounded up Kabrinovich, Grabes, and the others. They find the weapons, Serbian military issue. They trace the conspirators' movements back across the border. And they discover the connection to the Black Hand, to Serbian military intelligence, to Belgrade. The evidence is damning. Not conclusive, maybe. Not enough to prove the Serbian government ordered the hit, but enough to fuel suspicion. Enough to justify what comes next. In Vienna, the hawks smell blood. Austria-Hungary has wanted to crush Serbia for years. The kingdom is a thorn in the empire side, a rallying point for Slavic nationalism, a threat to Habsburg control of the Balkans. And now they have a pretext. The assassination of the heir. An act of war. But there's a problem. Russia. Russia sees itself as the protector of the Slavic peoples. If Austria-Hungary attacks Serbia, Russia will intervene. And if Russia intervenes, Germany, Austria's ally, will have to respond. And if Germany mobilizes, France, Russia's ally, will mobilize too. And if France mobilizes, it's a chain reaction. A nightmare scenario that everyone has war-gamed but nobody really believes will happen. Because it's madness. Because it would mean the end of everything. July 1914. For 3 weeks, diplomats scramble. Austria-Hungary drafts an ultimatum to Serbia. It's a list of demands so harsh, so humiliating, that compliance is almost impossible. Suppress anti-Austrian propaganda. Arrest the conspirators' accomplices. Allow Austrian officials into Serbia to investigate. It's designed to be rejected. And on July 28th, exactly 1 month after the assassination, Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Russia mobilizes in support of Serbia. Germany warns Russia to stand down. Russia refuses. Germany declares war on Russia. France mobilizes in support of Russia. Germany declares war on France and invades Belgium to get around French defenses. Britain, guarantor of Belgian neutrality, declares war on Germany. In 6 weeks, the entire continent is at war. The First World War. The Great War. The war to end all wars. 4 years of slaughter. Trenches. Poison gas. Machine guns mowing down men by the thousands. 16 million dead. 20 million wounded. The Russian Empire collapses, consumed by revolution. The German Empire falls. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, the sprawling, ancient realm of the Habsburgs, disintegrates completely, carved up into new nations. And the Ottoman Empire, the sick man of Europe, breathes its last. 4 empires. Gone. The map of the world redrawn. All because of 2 bullets fired on a street corner in Sarajevo. Gavrilo Princip never saw the war he started. Under Austro-Hungarian law, he couldn't be executed. He was 19, just under the age of 20, which made him a minor. So instead, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. They sent him to their Eisenstadt, a fortress in Bohemia. A cold, damp, miserable place. His tuberculosis, undiagnosed when he pulled the trigger, worsened rapidly. The disease ate through his lungs, his bones. His arm had to be amputated. He wasted away. On April 28, 1918, just months before the war ended, Gavrilo Princip died in his cell. He weighed less than 90 pounds. He was 23 years old. Nedeljko Kabrinovich died in January 1916. Also tuberculosis. Trifko Grabes died in prison in 1916. Of the 6 conspirators, only Vaso Kubrilovich survived. Released after the war, he became a historian, a scholar of the very events he helped set in motion. He lived until 1990. He never expressed regret. Here's the question that haunts historians. Was the assassination of Franz Ferdinand the cause of World War I? Or just the excuse? Because you can argue it both ways. On one hand, it's obvious. No assassination, no Austrian ultimatum. No ultimatum, no war. But on the other hand, Europe in 1914 was a tinderbox. Militarism, imperialism, tangled alliances, an arms race spiraling out of control. Something was going to light the fuse. If it hadn't been Sarajevo, it would have been something else. A colonial dispute, a naval incident, another assassination, another crisis. The system was broken. The great powers were locked into a logic of escalation they couldn't escape. Franz Ferdinand's murder didn't create that system. It just exposed it. And here's the tragic irony. Franz Ferdinand was one of the few people who might have prevented the war. His reforms, if he'd lived long enough to implement them, could have diffused Slavic nationalism within the empire, given the Serbs, the Croats, the Bosniaks a stake in the system, a reason not to tear it all down. He wasn't a liberal. He wasn't a saint. But he was a pragmatist. He understood the empire couldn't survive without change. And the Black Hand killed him for it. They murdered the one man who might have saved them from the catastrophe they unleashed. Walk through Sarajevo today, and you'll find a plaque. Right there on the corner, near the Latin Bridge, where Schiller's Delicatessen used to be. It marks the spot where Gavrilo Princip stood when he fired 2 shots that changed history. For decades, the plaque was ambiguous. It noted the event without judgment. An assassination. A catalyst. But the way people remembered Princip shifted with the politics of the region. In Yugoslavia, under Tito, Princip was a hero, a freedom fighter, a martyr who struck a blow against imperialism. After Yugoslavia's violent collapse in the 1990s, another Balkan nightmare, more ethnic hatred, more blood, Princip became controversial again. To some, still a hero. To others, a terrorist, a footnote, a cautionary tale. Because that's the thing about history. It's never just about the past. It's about how we choose to remember it, how we shape it, how we use it to justify what we do next. Gavrilo Princip thought he was fighting for freedom. He thought he was lighting a torch. Instead, he lit a funeral pyre. 50 million dead across 2 world wars. The second a direct consequence of the first. Entire generations erased. And it all started with a 19-year-old boy, a pistol, and a sandwich. 2 shots. That's all it takes. You can still hear them, if you listen closely, echoing down through the decades. In the ruins of Ypres and the Somme. In the ashes of Hiroshima. In the shattered remains of Srebrenica, 80 years later, when the Balkans erupted again and proved that nothing had been learned. Franz Ferdinand wanted to reform an empire. Gavrilo Princip wanted to free a people. Both of them failed. And the world burned. Because that's the lesson of Sarajevo, if there is one. History doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't care what you thought you were fighting for. It only cares what you did. And sometimes, what you did was pull a trigger. And sometimes, that's all it takes to end the world.